So it's delightful to spend time with you, Christiane. And I have a few questions. How do you see musculoskeletal health fitting into the general wellness and empowerment picture for women?
It is the absolute foundation of health and wellness, the way you carry yourself. If you think about it, especially with your work, when I see the photographs of people with beautiful primal posture, then every organ in the body works better. But it's almost as though the divine energy of the universe then has the proper vessel to come through. If you're all this way, or you're sitting all day, or if your hamstrings are too tight, or if you're constantly wearing high heels, you simply do not have the pathways through the fascia. You know, the acupuncture meridians all go through the fascia. You don't have those operating. So the flow of life energy, of chi, of prana is all blocked. So I would say that your work is the utter foundation of women's health.
Oh, that's a strong statement. I'm
Yeah.
curious about your experience with musculoskeletal challenges. Like, what things have you tried? What have been the results? Can you share that with us?
Well, it's interesting that after, growing up in a household of athletes, like everything was sport. It was, you know, skiing and tennis and hiking and golf. That's movement in basically two planes. You know, you're hiking, you're skiing. There isn't a lot of variety to sports. Sports operate on a specific skill level, but until you have the entire body operating, what those sports do, like I've never known a lifelong golfer who didn't have back pain. Probably someone who did the Gokhale Method would not have back pain, but generally, or, you know, tennis, unless you're ambidextrous, you're hitting with one arm only, which by necessity makes you off balance. And I was never, I just couldn't fit into the competitive sports arena. What was much more interesting to me was dance, but my family didn't do dance. And later in life, I was doing a lot of speaking engagements, and I needed a workout I could do in a hotel room. And I found Pilates, like authentic Pilates, not the Pilates you learn on a weekend, but Joe Pilates, authentic Pilates. And by the way, just because it's interesting right now, in the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918, not a single one of Joe Pilates' students got sick. And because the flow of energy was going and so on. People don't know this, but he was in Germany at the time that he was in England at the time the war broke out, and he couldn't go back to his home country, so they put him to work rehabbing soldiers. So anyhow,
those equipment pieces look like hospital beds.
Exactly, that's it.
We're in hospital beds, and
yeah, because that's what he had. That's what he had. So Pilates really began to save my life. I'd had this right hip problem since my early 30s. I would drive to Maine from Boston. I'd get out of the car and I literally could not walk. It was an imbalance in the hip, probably the psoas muscle way too tight on the right. And I'd have to swing my leg and pretend that it was elongating to get the joint working before I could walk. I began Pilates and that began to go away. But then I was at a workshop that my niece did at her sock company, and she sells these. It's called the Purple Doorknob. It's an adorable place in my hometown of Ellicottville, New York. And my Pilates teacher is doing a workshop on feet, how to rehabilitate your feet. And I learned a lot and got a lot out of that when I started to dance tango. And I have wide feet. I've always had problems with my feet. You know, I probably would not have had problems with my feet in a primal culture, but you know, the shoes never worked, and the foot's too wide for the shoes. Anyway, so I did a lot of work to rehabilitate my feet, and some of that was classical Pilates. As we're leaving, the workshop, someone behind me says, there's this book, 8 Weeks to a Pain-Free Back. It did for my back what Born to Run did for my feet. Now, I had read Born to Run, which I thought was an astounding book.
Hard to put down, isn't it?
Yeah. It was an amazing, amazing book.
Yeah.
And so I overheard this person, 8 Weeks to a Pain-Free Back. So I instantly ordered your book.
Slightly inaccurate because it's 8 steps to a pain-free back, but that's what they said. 8 weeks, people said 8 something to a pain-free back. Yeah.
But here's the thing. I got the book, and then I noticed that your work was, someone else who I think you knew had sent me a lot of books about posture, but I realized that their work was what we would call in science a derivative work of your work, that I suddenly realized I had the Holy Grail in my hands of what this really was about.
In fact, we were both influenced by several pioneers in the field of anthropologically informed posture work, but it is true that they studied with someone who studied with me. So yeah, it's accurate, I think, to say that to some extent it was derivative.
Yeah.
But then so both are influenced, and the web gets very complicated, you know,
yeah, right.
Like influences come every which way. But yeah, so
yeah,
you were moved by this book.
I was moved by it, and then I began to practice some of the things in the book, like stretch, sleeping, but I knew actually that it's always better. It's like you can't learn Pilates from a book. You need somebody who's really trained. And so what I did was I began to look at the different trainers in the book, and there was someone from Bermuda, and she was sometimes in Boston. And, you know, I wanted to take a workshop to learn this because I was also having some issues with my mid back. And
it's smart that you're experienced enough to know that. I mean, being a physician, having gone around the blocks a few times, know that, because a lot of people think, I should be able to just get this from whatever little snippets on the internet. And, you know, people feel foolish to spend if they don't absolutely need to. And so sometimes they miss out. So you were wise to know that it's immeasurably better to get a coach to really give you feedback back and forth. It's nuanced.
Yes, and the thing is that, and so anyway, she got me in touch with you. We spoke on the phone, and you said, why don't you come and, you know, and we'll do a class. And I thought, and it was going to be January, and January in Maine is never a great time to be here unless you're, you know, really like the cold. And so I thought, I'll do that. And then so I'm looking at places to stay in Palo Alto, and my sister and brother-in-law were going to come with me, and that didn't work. And so it was sort of a perfection thing because I stayed with you in your home. You walk in and
we kind of hit it off in a couple of conversations, and I thought, you know, we can do this the formal way, but hey, if you're cool and willing to improvise, I would enjoy having, it's not every day that Christiane Northrup calls me up. I think I would enjoy this as an enrichment experience, and boy, was I right.
Yeah, we really had a wonderful time. You took me on a hike, and even from the beginning there were, you know, little corrections that you were able to make in my movement and my posture. Then I joined a class, and what was so fun for me is that this class was someone who'd worked on the autonomous vehicle project from MIT. In other words, these were the most educated people on planet Earth. And here's Esther teaching us how to sit, how to walk. That was one of the funniest things in the world. I'm with all these postdocs who are, you know, enormous intellects, and you're teaching us how to walk. again, because we didn't get it. And then I learned how to look at posture, and I looked at the posture in my grandchildren, and I saw our posture is perfect until the built environment and then the habits that they see all around them mess things up. And then that's the beginning of back pain, all kinds of problems that come from the way we live. But you had to study other cultures that are not industrialized and advanced to see how the body actually is supposed to work. And what's interesting is there's just a few corrections that you can make. I, of course, swear by the Gokhale chair. I'm in one, right now. I'll just show everybody. This is my Gokhale office chair.
Yeah, those are the little nubbies in the back.
Yeah.
Help put you in traction as you're sitting. Very helpful.
That's right. And also the seat tilts down slightly so that it puts the pelvis in the proper position. Like, your pelvis, your pelvic bowl should be tilted so that water would flow out of it. It helped me a great deal, by the way, with my understanding of pelvic organ support. The pubic symphysis is supposed to be under us, not tilted up.
With the irrelevant in the front, and then all you have underneath is your little pubococcygeal muscles, and it's like an invitation for your insides to fall out of you, right?
Exactly.
And you would have seen that for decades as a practicing OB-GYN.
Yes, exactly. But I think the thing that was most fun for me was learning proper hip hinging. And I remember putting things in my suitcase in your little guest room and hip hinging and being able to just lean down, and it felt so good. The thing is that these postures create a memory in us of well-being, that this is the way this vessel is supposed to move.
It's a kind of sweet spot feeling, isn't it? Like it just feels right when you get it. It's like, things relax, fall into place, and there's a sense, it's similar to when you hit a tennis ball right in the right spot and it springs well, sweet spot.
Yes, that's right. And so I learned that not only in the class, but then, we'd get up and do a little yoga and all of that, those things stay with you. The shoulder roll that you do and teach is amazing. I mean, it's amazing.
No, and it's also the easiest, simplest thing we teach. That we teach in every free online workshop. It's so easy, and it can't really go wrong if people are gentle. Like, if they insist on being perfect overnight, then there might be a problem because they're asking too much length from their pecs, and maybe it's sitting right on top of the brachial plexus and you're feeling numbness and tingling down the arms. But if people are just a little bit gentle, then it can't go wrong. And it has so much effect, right? Opening up breathing, opening up circulation, stopping, pulling your upper body into an increasing hunch as you age. I mean, that's a lot of effect for one little tiny shoulder roll. Meg.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
I'm watching you like enjoy all these moments, like you were so full of delight and so fresh and open. It was really awesome to experience my work through you.
Wonderful, wonderful. And then the other thing was with the sensors that you had on our backs so that you could see what the alignment should be. And there's another thing that I never noticed before and then began to notice it. And that is when the vertebrae stick out of somebody's back, like they look like
Stegosaurus?
Like Stegosaurus, when in fact that's not supposed to be that way. There's supposed to be an indentation from the entire spine. And all these things ought to be something that is taught in schools. I actually believe at this particular moment in history, we are and breakdown to breakthrough in the educational system. I don't think it will ever be the same. I can tell you that my grandchildren will not be going back to a school that requires masks. And for little kids, this is the body was not made for that. Zach Bush is one of my heroes, and he says the second law of thermodynamics is that whenever you separate a system from other systems in nature, you create chaos. You create chaos, and we see that with the current social isolation. Suicides have gone up 4 times. People are, when in prisons, we put people in solitary confinement as a punishment. And now we're putting people in solitary confinement as a protection. But you see, there's all these other systems in life where we're meant to interact with the environment. And one of the things your work teaches is how do we optimally interact with our bodies in a physical vessel.
Yeah.
And, so, and if someone is still in lockdown or doesn't want to go out, this would be a very good time to take some of your classes virtually and practice.
It's astounding to me and a little embarrassing because I held back the online teaching. It was just, like if it absolutely can't happen any other way, then that's the way we'll do it.
Right.
But because of the circumstances, we are forced to discover it works incredibly well. That was shock. I mean, and one of the big advantages we have is that we can chunk it into like 13-minute segments, so people are learning just one thing at a time so that they can enjoy it and integrate it before moving on to the next little thing the next day. So we have daily or every other day lessons of just 13 minutes, and it's become fun, which is such a surprise and shock, I have to say. Like, okay, why was I holding this back all this time? And people don't have to commute, and they can work with their relevant furniture, their couch and their pillows, and, instead of coming to a center where you obviously can't bring your couch along.
Right.
So I have a question.
Yes.
If you imagine a future society that is ideal, and it has a whole bunch of health and wellness measures and philosophies and theories in place, where does the Gokhale Method fit in that whole pantheon or array of measures and philosophies? Where do you place it?
I would say that it needs to be the foundation. I mean, how we move, how we hold ourselves influences how we think, what we eat. So I would imagine, and one of the things that, we co-create each other's biology. We influence, we co-author each other's biology. So if you are and that's the work of Mario Martinez, and it's why social shaming is so powerful, because as people, we want to all fit in. And they've done some classic psychological experiments where they have people adding up an equation, and they have people voluntarily give the wrong answer. And so enough of them give the wrong answer that the person who's giving the right answer begins to feel uncomfortable and eventually gives the wrong answer to fit in.
Wow.
But when it comes to posture, if you were around people with primal posture all the time, and children, one of the things we've talked about is the amount of time in car seats. So the beauty of right now is that people are not spending as much time in their cars. So all kinds of good things are happening.
It's true.
The planet is recovering, and people are riding their bikes everywhere. You can't even buy a bike there. There's so many people wanting to buy them. So that's wonderful. and children are not being commuting to care centers in seats. So my feeling is you would have the built environment would support this. One of the things in your book you talk about how in the 1920s furniture changed and the slouch became fashionable. Well, it might be fashionable, but it's distinctly unhealthy.
Yeah.
And
We've
so
stayed with that. I mean, the runway models today are still doing the kind of tuck pelvis, thrust your hips forward, flapper look, you know.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
stayed for like 100 years, amazingly.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that we would, I mean, one of the things that was astounding to me that I think many of us have seen, you see the pictures from the Civil War, let's say, you know, when photography really started in, and everyone looked so formal. They weren't formal, they just had great posture.
Exactly. People assume that they must have been holding themselves and very rigid, but actually that's relaxed and natural. We just can't believe that you could be in such good alignment without huge efforts and, you know, poles behind you and such, but actually it was their regular posture. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. The other thing I think maybe I would do um, is do something regularly where you had to carry something on your head, like those amazing women who never ever get osteoporosis ever, and that creates a vertical vector of stress
Yeah,
throughout the entire
totally.
body that through a piezoelectric effect brings in all kinds of minerals into the spine. And so imagine if you learned how to do that early on, your posture would be perfect and your spine would be perfect.
I always say if I could wave my magic wand twice, I would bring carrying on the head back as a fashion, and I would bring dance back into the fabric of society, not just in a class and in a gym, but really like when every time people get together, which now is rarer, but
Yes.
you know, when that happens, and even within neighborhoods, within families, within little communities, dance wants to be part of the currency of the social life, I think. So those would be my two.
I would agree with you. In fact, you know, when we're all home watching movies, and one of the things that I see is dance is extraordinarily important for bringing a community together. And I have worked within a tango community, Argentine tango community here in our area.
Oh,
And indeed, that's what everyone does. You get together and dance.
you know, we started a daily, January 1st, before COVID. I
Right.
woke in December and I woke up and I realized we weren't doing well by our alumni. We were not helping keep this on mind. So I said, okay, I'm going to show up every morning. And I chose a very bad time, 7 a.m., which is not sustainable. It's a way to guarantee you're not going to have help in your studio, which was good practice for COVID because I don't have help in my studio. It's now 10 a.m., much more reasonable California time. But so that program began, and it's a little 13-minute program every day to help people keep one thing on their mind. But I opened up 15 minutes leading into it becomes a free-form dance party. And that has now more and more and more people are coming. Joan Baez comes every day. And all these people are showing up because dance is great. You do it and you feel good. So it's just a freestyle dance party, but that's now I'm starting to scratch my head and think which part is the program now? You know, I stay for Q&A after, so we got sort of 3 parts. But dance, people feel it. And I have people who've never danced before who don't think of themselves as dancers, but when they discover the dancer, which I think is in everybody, sometimes
Yes.
you have to scratch deep a little bit, scratch through some layers, but it's a human universal. And then when you discover it, you realize, oh my goodness, you know, you can't get this number of things from anything else.
That's right.
you stretch, strengthen, community, change your brain. Anyway, you and I are on the same page on that.
Yes, yes. And it's delightful. I mean, it's just delightful. There's no downside whatsoever. None. And then if you really want to up it, then partner dancing really changes the brain. It really does. And frankly, it was, for me, learning tango was harder than medical school because it brings up all of your inhibitions and, you know, are you worthy? And yeah. But once you break through and you're part of a community, then it's very nourishing.
I've always been daunted by salsa. Samba on my own, no problem. I know which way I'm going to go, and you don't have to twirl and whirl. But salsa, it's like, whoa, those are complex twirling and whirling, and you have to really listen and be sensitive to what the partner is directing. Difficult. So I haven't gone there, but I want to.
Right. When this is over, you can go.
Totally. With the chosen few at first.
Yeah.
So I have a question to ask of you, because you are so amazingly good at this and senior to me in getting the word out. How do you think that we, the Gokhale Method, and its little offering that we think is stellar, how are we going to get the word out to people? How are we going to build awareness of the importance of posture, and that it really needs to be embraced, and that people need to be coached for quite some time to get the nuance? How are we going to get that word out?
I think that it needs to be, well, I've certainly taught people about it. It's in the latest edition of Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom, my, you know, 5th edition of that gigantic tome. And I tell a lot of people about it. It seems to me that through social media, but really in the same way that you're doing your dance classes and Q&A and all of that, I think one of the things that we're seeing is that like the educational system, the healthcare system is on its way to disintegration. It is focused on drugs for diseases. It is not focused on actual care of the human form throughout the life cycle. It's simply not. And we have all kinds of documents showing that the pharmaceutical industry is interested in lifetime customers. It's not interested in health. So while this breakdown to breakthrough is going on, and it's all of this year, and we should start to see the light of day by the beginning of 2021, then I believe that the consciousness, just like the consciousness about our food supply and regenerating soil and all of this, is going to arise.
Yeah.
Because it is the truth. You know, it's kind of like the truth. Your body, the body feels the truth. When I started to do the hip hinging and felt the stretch on my hamstrings that felt good, or going to sleep at night with stretching the spine so that it stays in traction, this feels good. These are very simple things that can be taught, must be taught, need to be part of every single community. I think it will be an organic spread unless you have a movement where every teacher, everyone who's been trained to teach, has the ability to get online and to do this social media stuff. Zach Bush has a wonderful way of talking about the internet. And in soil, we know that fungus in soil, which is everywhere, is the internet of the planet. And so these myceliae, whatever they're called.
Mycelia.
Mycelia, that's it, mycelia. They talk to each other, and it is a system, and it's also very organic. Now, I think we'll see the same. Currently, right now, our big social media platforms are heavily censored. with anything that does not fit the agenda. The censorship is beyond anything I've seen. So I would say to your listeners, don't use Google Chrome anymore. Go to DuckDuckGo. There's far less censorship.
Really?
You'll be amazed. Just put in the search engine a topic, maybe a topic that's a hot topic, vaccines. Put it in Chrome, put it in DuckDuckGo, and see the difference in what you get. We're in an era now of kind of literal or figurative book burning. And this is not organic and it's not sustainable, because in nature, we know that nature is wild, it's abundant. I mean, you have an organic garden in your backyard. And you know how it goes. There's miraculous.
Yeah, I'm very attached to it.
Exactly.
It's
I mean, we talk about your mushrooms growing on those oak logs.
And the wood chips, the wine cap mushrooms, yeah.
Yeah, and that is a very specific ecosystem. You created it, but in partnership with nature. There's a way that it's done, but it's in partnership with nature, and nature has its own intelligence that you're working with. And we have to get back to the intelligence of nature, and primal posture and moving in a certain way it's the intelligence of nature.
It's all about that, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Fighting a lot more battles than I am, Christiane. I'm like, I keep my ecosystem very circumscribed because this is all I know well. And I'm just so grateful that I get to talk with someone like you who has a lot of knowledge, a lot of wisdom. And thank you. Thank you for your suggestions and your work on the planet.
Thank you. And thank you for yours in this time of enormous rebirth. You know, a diamond is carbon that has been under a lot of pressure and a lot of heat.
That's true.
May we all become diamonds during this great awakening, I call it. Yes.
Or diamonds in the rough.
Right.
Thank you so much, Christiane.
Thank you. Thank you.